Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Resident Alien. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're picking up with Harry and the alien track, and I love that Asta stops by and he's like, well, no, you should go. He's like, I have a fever. He's like, oh no, I have the gout from putting organs on my pizza. And the baby monitor goes off and she's like, what was that? And he's like, what? That was me practicing ventriloquism. I'm getting very good at it. And it's like, oh, you kidnapped the alien tracker. And I love the little back and forth because Asta, I mean, it's a good thing Asta was there to kind of be the through line for both of them. Because it's like, oh, you tried to kill me. It's like, yeah, you almost left me for dead when you ripped that tracker. I was like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Ugh. Did you think about putting some vitamin E in it or something? Like, what? Why aren't you doing something about that? That scar, that wound is disgusting. But Asta continuing to be that bridge kind of to Harry's humanity, because I love that he's like, yeah, I'm going to torture the information out of you. I'm not touching you. I'm like, oh, I love how much of an idiot you are, because you're thinking, I mean, I think the human race is lucky that you're kind of the idiot you are when it comes to humans, but that you're not like the Greys at all. But it's like, yeah, you both have a common enemy. You both have the Greys, because we get backstory on, I mean, well, we already knew it, but we get to see it. This is that scene we got between the alien tracker and his wife. It was like their baby it's like, oh, our baby would be 2 now. And he's like, hey, did you want to, we could try again. And she's like, I'm not ready. And he's like, yeah, whenever you are, And then in that moment when he turned around and she was gone, I was like, they froze time and took her. But then they brought her back. She's like, they show me our son. And the way he talks about it, Alien Tracker's like, yeah, like my son, we see him so often. But the moment Harry took the tracker out of his neck is when they stopped taking him, because they probably couldn't find him anymore to like take him. But that was the only way he ever saw his son anymore. I don't know if he ever talked about whether or not his wife must not be alive anymore. So for him, it's probably like he's the only one left for the connections to their child. He's the only one that could ever be to meet them, to meet his son. And that's really sad and heartbreaking to know that that's what they do. And I guess their thing is just like why they specifically take humans. I guess maybe to get whatever they need to out of humans. Like maybe they experiment on humans by being like, all right, let's see you in a like kind of experimentation of like, yeah, let's see a human growing up in the conditions that we want to. Like, I wonder, do they kidnap him? Because like the fact is, jumping ahead a little bit, we find out one of the people that McAllister had locked up was the alien tracker's son. So it's like, right, he's here on Earth. The Greys haven't had them the entire time. So did they let him go and he got captured by McAllister? But we know one of the people working at that facility is a Grey in disguise, I'm assuming, or at least, so what's that all about is my big thing of like, it feels like has to be like a giant human experiment. And the fact is that they bring your parents to see you just to like, oh, it's almost like they're studying wildlife. They're like, oh, let's see how you interact when you're taken from your parents. Oh, here you're spending time. Like maybe that's their whole shtick. I don't know. Seems extremely jacked up because once again, it's like, I think it's probably almost like a little bit of a reflection on like, humans could do the same thing. Like, just kind of do wild experiments on animals and we're not really thinking much of it. So I'm sure like maybe like the parallel could be seen in how they look at, I mean, humans, we are animals, but probably like the aliens, the Greys in particular. Well, not just them. We know Harry's species Harry in particular looks down upon humans. So probably a lot of other alien species are like, oh, we're far superior than these idiots, regardless. But I did like the quick turnaround of Harry and the alien tracker working. It's like, right, we both want the same thing. We're going to take care of these bad guys. And it's like, right, he trusts Asta's judgment because like, right, Asta always does the right thing, even though it annoys me and she stops me from killing people, but fine, whatever. And then, I love the whole him making him breakfast. It's like, right, you need to if you sharpen your knife, the onions won't make you cry. He's like, I'm not crying because of the onions. He's like, I'm crying because I saw a video today of a dog befriending and I really love that, like, I don't know what the prosthetic situation is for that get up, but like the adjustment of the eyes to look at like he was actually crying, I'm like, wow, that's really good. Like, I'm curious, like, the full setup for the prosthetics for that. Like, did they have to do, like, did they have to rearrange things on the prosthetics, or is it kind of like prosthetics kind of similar to how Colin Farrell had for the Penguin and the Batman? Like, it is something that you could still kind of act through, and it kind of goes with you. Is there kind of motion I'm curious how that works, because that's so interesting. But either way, putting those tangents aside, I think it's so interesting that I love that the alien tracker's like, oh yeah, I saw that video too, it's fake. He's like, it's not fake, it's beautiful. And he's crying, and he's like, all right, I'll take care of the onions. He's like, fine, you take care of the onions, you do this job. And I love that. It's like, right, he knows about General McAllister, he knows about the government facility in Wyoming, because he was making too much noise and they tried to track him. That's why he's been very, like, low-key and off the radar, I guess, except for, like, his appearances and such. So now they're working together. Like, okay, you can get to the facility if you bring them something they want. So pretends to capture Harry and stuff. And I love later on when everything's, like, revealed, and the alien tracker's like, hey, when he kind of pulls his move, and it's like, oh, you're working with and McAllister's like, oh, you're working with the alien. And he's like, no, I'm not. Why would you think I'm working with the alien? And then, like, Harry's in this alien form, like, waving to the camera, like, yeah, we did it, buddy. That was super cute. And I also love the back and forth between the alien tracker and, he's like, yeah, I'm an expert in all of this. And she's like, how many aliens have you actually captured? And she's like, besides the one you're working with. He's like, is one not enough? He's like, how many? She's like, I'm not going to tell you. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, but have you actually captured an alien? She's smug about it. It's like, well, you kind of didn't really capture an alien. It literally, well, you kind of did, but it also willingly gave in to you because you didn't actually know it was an alien. You thought it was kind of BS until it revealed itself to you. So I think that's kind of like, there's a bit of an asterisk beside you capturing. Same thing in his case. It's like, he didn't technically capture Harry. Harry actually captured him. But when it's all said and done, though, everyone getting broken free. And I love that he's like, I was like, hey, I ran into you. It's like, yeah, I knew it. Wait, that was you? It's like, yeah, you know, when it gave me like that strange fruit at that alien thing. He's like, oh my God, that was you. And he's like, I knew they existed. And he was like, hey, buddy. He's like, you know, I'm kind of in the middle of something right now, you know, so we should probably, you know, meet up and talk about this later. He's like, okay, and hugs him. And Harry's like, I'm not really a hugger. I'm like, I love all this commotion going down, and this is happening. I also love that all the people, I love him bringing that full circle, the people he knocked out at the end of season 1, him mind controlling them to kind of be his soldiers to fight everyone off. I thought that was pretty dope. Because once again, it's just like, just whenever they want to, they're going to sprinkle in some stuff that Harry's capable of doing. I'm like, we didn't know he could. I don't think he's ever utilized that ability before, but I wonder is it because, like, the manner in which he knocked him out? Does that, well, I mean, I guess it shouldn't be too much of a surprise because, like, this season really leans into the whole, like, oh yeah, like, he can wipe people's memories. Granted, he's only done it on 2 occasions, but technically 3 times because he did it to Mike and Liv, but that was kind of like a one package deal, and then he did it to Asta. So he's done it twice. So, you know, it's not like they utilize, you know, so they sprinkle stuff in whenever they want to. I think it's just for the sake of, like, oh, whatever kind of fun things we could do with the story. But he ended up getting the entire message from the baby, from Goliath's message. Granted, we never got to see it, so it's probably going to be something that happens next episode when he talks to Asta about all of it. But I love that he's just kind of like, all right, I no longer need you, but it's like, and it calls him daddy, and he's just like, oh, come here, you. And I love that he's giving him a little noogie. He's like, oh, come here, you little shit. And he's tossing it up, and then it hits his head. He's like, oh, damn, Jesus. It's like a sweet bonding moment. And I love the parallels between him and the alien tracker. Like, the alien tracker doing what he did ended up being about love. I love that this entire episode's about that. It's about love in so many fashions, and I love that line of, you might not always see it, but the love is there, you know, that not just commitment, but the devotion. And I'm like, oh, it's actually really beautiful elements to this episode. It's sad that the alien tracker was able to find his son at it all. And the fact is, him and Harry were able to find their children. And it's like, oh, you found yours. It's like you found yours too. So it's like, right. That's why the Greys had an interest in that one in particular. Like, I wonder, is he the only human they've taken an interest in? Because jumping around a little bit with everything Ben was going through this episode, at first I was like, you don't think he can't be the alien tracker's son, can he? It's like, there's no way they're gonna like make that. Because I thought like, there's like no, especially with like the dream he was had, I was like, would that have any correlation with, was that nightmare supposed to be like symbolic of like the Greys or something? Like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, there's no way, like, because of like, not unless his family knew that he was adopted and didn't never tell him, and I was wondering if that was going. I thought the Ben stuff was related to the alien tracker. It turns out it's completely not. His son was, we got little peeks to his son over the course of this season when we cut back to like that Grey being like, oh, you shouldn't remember, so it makes you, well, because we at least know like 1 in 1,000 people can see Harry for what he is. So like their mind probably works a little differently. So a lot of like it probably means like his son's a special case, probably like him and like Max. So it's probably a thing of, especially considering the alien tracker could do it. Maybe like, maybe there's a genetic marker. Maybe it's a little more prevalent when you have children. So like, if you have the genetic marker that lets you see an alien for who they really are, then maybe other people, then maybe his son does as well. We haven't really seen whether that's the case or not, but it is sad the alien tracker died for multiple reasons. One, for Liv, it's like, oh my God, they became fast friends, and she was worried about him. Like, oh, I don't know if he's okay, because usually he puts up posts, just to say hi to the fans or like wish him happy birthday. And she's like, my birthday's like right around the corner. I was like, oh, Liv. But also Max. Max found someone that he was like, oh my God, like you're like me. He finally found like a connection where he didn't feel like he was alone in the world. The fact is, he can see Harry for what Harry really is all the time. So it's kind of sad for both of them that it's like, someone that they both befriended and, felt a connection with is now gone. But it was all in service of saving his son, and I think that was beautiful. Surprises, I think, and I think maybe it's just Asta and just maybe the humanity kind of affecting him, is that Harry didn't kill the alien that was in the sky. He sent some of those soldiers, like he had infected, like took control of their mind to beat him up. But when it came to McAllister, he could have killed her, but I don't know whether it was the baby being like, please don't, that made him stop. And so he let her go. So that was interesting. I was like, are you about to, it's like, no, you're, I was like, okay, good. Don't. I was like, we need to keep Linda Hamilton in the show, like, it's for as long as possible. So I was kind of glad to see that her character McAllister didn't get killed. But it's like, yeah, she kind of walked away with nothing. It's like, cool, she lost the alien baby, and she lost the alien ball. So I'm curious to see what Harry ends up utilizing that for. It might come in handy, like, in this fight against the Greys, what he's able to do with that. I mean, it might, I don't know. I'm curious to see what he, maybe it was used earlier in the season and I just don't remember I know he wanted the alien ball back, but I don't remember what it's going to be useful for. Like, not unless it's going to help contact his people, because maybe if he can contact his people, he can get them to help fight the Greys, but I don't know if they'd be really interested in that fight, especially for the human race, we'll see. But also with, once again, we don't know what all of Goliath, future Harry's messages for himself. We don't know what that totally is. So, I mean, but he probably has some idea of like, right, I lived through all it, so this is how it all starts. If you know what's coming, like Harry's probably he's had hundreds of years to figure out like, okay, what went wrong? What could I have done? Which is interesting because like the alien tracker felt the same way. So, but at least he died knowing like, hey, my son's okay. Please save my son, I thought that was beautiful. And ultimately, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, going forward with that. But tying in all the other elements of the episode, there's the whole situation with Mike doing his like pros and cons to, Torres and stuff like that. I think he had looked into her, and Liv was like, oh, you should look into some. She's like, I didn't look into John. He's like, no, I did, but don't worry, he's clean. You, on the other hand, you got a C- in social studies. She's like, Mr. Miller, like, had it out for me. He said I asked too many questions. You don't think I asked too many questions, do you? Mike didn't respond. And she's like, wow. And it's just kind of like, yeah, she had said something, and he was like, that's something super pessimistic coming out of a face that's able, out of that person who's able to make such a beautiful trumpet sound with their mouth. And I was like, oh. And but she's talking about the alien tracker and being worried about him. It's like, you didn't hear anything I said. You're not even listening to me, are you? And he's like, what? And she's like, exactly. I was like, oh. She does look into it later on, and she sees the alien tracker with someone. Granted, she can't tell it's Harry from there, but eventually she will find out it's Harry, and she'll probably be like, wait, did you kill the alien tracker? Just knowing, like, I'm curious to see what ends up happening there when she does find out Harry is an alien. Probably also going to feel a little weird that Asta knew and didn't say anything, so that's probably going to be interesting. Well, understandably so, but she's going to be like, wow. I mean, Austin never made her feel like she was crazy, but it's like, wow, you knew the entire time and you just kind of let me spiral a little bit, but probably finding out about the alien tracker. She might even be worried thinking that Harry might have killed the alien tracker, so that might end up turning into a whole situation. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But, other elements to the episode, circling back to the Ben situation, I thought was really interesting, where he ended up because of the whole not sleeping thing. And I love that he is a little paranoid, because he was like, oh, Deborah, like, didn't even give me a high bid. And that this coffee, it's lukewarm. And then I love that Mike sticks his whole finger in there. He's like, no, that's pretty hot. That's actually pretty good coffee. And Ben's like, not anymore if you stuck your whole hand into it. But it's like, yeah, he was a little on edge. And that's why I was wondering, like, oh, because the whole, like, him being cold thing, I was like, oh, is that, once again, I was still under the impression, like, maybe it has something to do with, but it's like, right, he was out in the middle of the night sleepwalking, which Kate learns from Liv, it's actually something that happened from a young age. She actually did an English paper about it, and she's also like, yeah, it found him on someone's steps cuddling a cat. It's like, oh, yeah, my cat was never the same afterwards. I was like, I love that it ended up being your cat, Liv. I just, it's a small town, so of course there'd be those connections. But sadly, Ben ended up falling asleep at the wheel. Luckily, he turned out okay, and I love Ellen being like, it was actually really sweet, Ellen being like, all right, we're just going to say you veered on some ice and that you weren't drinking. He was like, I wasn't drinking. She's like, exactly, stick to that story. It's like, yeah, he just veered into a ditch. He wasn't drinking. And she's like, I wasn't drinking. He's like, I wasn't drinking. Ellen's like, I know, that's what I said. She's like, so also you should know you don't have sex in here because people are listening. She's like, more so about me because I will be nearby and I have a 4K camera on my phone. So, and I love Ben. You know, it's this beautiful moment between him and Kate, where Kate's like, I'll give up this whole thing. Like, the resort could be good for the town because the nightmare was about, now, like he also explained, like he had explained earlier to her, like, oh, here's my mom, my dad, my uncles, and my aunts all standing over me, and I'm trying to ask for help, but they won't help me. The nightmare is about how his family, like, he got locked out and he kind of had nowhere to go. He was kind of alone. And so this feeling of being abandoned and that no one will be there for him, like that, those nightmares are recurring because Kate's like, oh, because we're at odds about this resort thing, you kind of feel like you can't rely on me. You can't ask me for help. You're feeling like you're being abandoned. The nightmare was about being abandoned by your family, and you feel like I'm doing the same thing to you. She's like, but he's like, no, I don't want you to compromise what you believe in just for me. And for him, it is a situation of in that moment, his life flashed before his eyes during the crash. And he's like, I'm thinking about all these, like, people in town that I care about, like you, Max, Asta, Darcy, Kayla, Liv, Max, Mike, Dan, and then, Ellen, aww. But it's like, for him, it's like, yeah, you know, it made him realize, like, patience, I just wanted to make patience perfect, but it already is. And so he's changed, and I figured he would. I knew eventually him and Kate would be on the same page again about, I knew he'd have a change of mind about the whole thing, but didn't realize this would be the circumstances that led to that. And, you know, but for him, it's like, yeah, like, you know, I spent so much of my time trying to make everyone like me, and that's okay that not everyone does. She's like, no, people love you. And he's like, no, they don't. He's like, I'm just the mayor to them. They don't love me, but you do. And to him, that's what really matters. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. But the really beautiful thing is, like, yeah, he says that. But when people heard about him, it wasn't just the main characters we know. It wasn't just Mike. It wasn't just Liv. It wasn't just Darcy and Asta. And then it was also Judy, and just everyone in town came to check on the mayor because they do love him. Yeah, you might not have gotten all the votes and stuff like that, but the thing is, people do love you because they do know you care about patients and you care about them. You know them, you know? So I think that was a beautiful thing where everyone was coming together in that moment at the end of the episode. It was a beautiful, beautiful, touching moment. I mean, it was all around. It's just a beautiful, I said that earlier, but it's just a lovely episode in that regard because you also have the whole Darcy thing. Apparently, it's been a couple of days. She's been staying at Asta and Dan's place. And Asta's almost like, oh, we need to kind of let her out of the cage, let her kind of spread her wings again because she's there cooking. And Dan's kind of like, yeah, but let someone else do the cooking for once. And I love that it's like, yeah, Asta's like, yeah, you need to talk to her because I need to play the role of the best friend and be there to support her when my mean old dad kicks her out. So I love that. And I love that later on they're playing, I want to say it's Don't Starve Together. I was like, wow, I've not seen that game in years. Holy crap. I was like, I think so. I don't think it's called, it might just be Don't Starve, but I'm pretty sure it's Don't Starve Together. Okay, so I looked it up. Don't Starve is the base game. Don't Starve I think it's Don't Starve is just the single player version. Don't Starve Together is the multiplayer expansion for it. I was like, man, I've not seen that in years. Obviously, if you can't tell, it's one of those survival foraging, almost like comparison you can make it. It's one of those survival games, kind of like Minecraft, where it's like, oh, you can build and gather resources. It's one of those type of games. Either way, putting all that aside, I was curious. I was like, oh, what video game are they going? Because sometimes they do show you what video game certain people are playing. I was like, oh my god! Like I said, I've not seen that game in years, so I was like, oh my god, that kind of was a little nostalgic at some point. Either way, so I love that Dan and Darcy were kind of doing that together, and especially when Asta came back, being like, wait, Darcy's still here? I thought you were gonna kick her out. It's like Dan's like, no, especially with everything going on, he wanted to kind of take things slow because she is going to a recovery group, but it's still kind of been a little bit. I love that she's like, oh, do I really need to get back to my life, working again? She's like, yeah, I go to a meeting, it's about 3 hours, and I'm like, oh, where did the day go? And even later on, being like, so Asta, you want to go to the record store later on or something? It's like, I love it. And Judy showing up with snacks. It's like, wait, Judy invited her over? It's like, yeah, just grab the snacks and don't let her in. But she's like, oh, hey, bestie, I brought some snacks and stuff like that. She's like, yeah, I got a whole bunch of stuff at my house. She's like, I also have a whole bunch of mice and stuff like that. And it's almost like, yeah, you could stay over at my place. It's like, I'm not staying at your place. She's like, right, I know. So she's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I guess I should just stay here too. And Austin's just like, no, don't. And it's like, what are you guys doing? And they're kind of playing together. And it's this really beautiful moment. And even Darcy's almost like, yeah, it's fun kind of having you around. It's like, yeah. She's like, Elliot's a jerk for breaking up with you. And I know you're probably thinking about him banging a whole bunch of different women and stuff after you guys broke up. Darcy's like, I sure as hell wasn't thinking about it before, but I'm sure as hell thinking about it now. So I love you so much, Judy. I even love when you see her at the end. She's drinking and then she kind of realizes I probably shouldn't bring a drink into hospital. So she just leaves him on the outside and goes inside. But I love that Asta was like, right, you need to kind of let her you can't enable her. You gotta let her spread her wings. And he's like, okay. And she's like, so you gotta kick her out. You're getting kicked out. And she also was almost like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, you're 100% right. I shouldn't be enabling you either. I should be letting you spread your wings. She was almost like, no, this was about Darcy, not about me. Okay. But it's because Asta realized, she was like, wow, I've never actually lived by myself, because she's been living with Dan ever since everything between her and Jimmy at the beginning of the series. So, but for her, it's like, yeah, I've always kind of lived with someone, so I don't know how to really be myself. And the same thing for Darcy, because having Asta around as she kind of uses that metaphor about your they talk about your grandma's cabin. It's like, yeah, grandpa would always fix the antenna so that she could watch her soap operas. And it's like, and she's like, when you're not around, that's my life, the fuzziness on a screen where you have to adjust the antenna. And it's like, you're that person who adjusts the fuzziness in my life. And also it's like, don't worry, I'll always be the person to hold your antenna. Gross. But it's like, yeah, them planning on moving in together. I'm like, that's super awesome. It's like, you're besties anyway, so probably it's going to be an adjustment period living with each other because you're hanging out all the time, sure, but it's probably not, it's a different ballpark when you're living together, but still, I thought that was kind of a beautiful thing. So, said it before, I'll say it again. Just a beautiful episode all around. And it's just a very sweet episode to have to be kind of like the second to last episode of the season. So, I mean, the next episode is, if I'm not mistaken, it should be the season finale, because I didn't watch the preview, but I'm fairly certain it's the season finale. So I'm like so curious to see where all of this ends up taking us, how the season ends up wrapping up. Some things have been resolved. There's still plenty of loose threads for stuff to kind of get played out. Because I don't even know if the whole Gavin and Powell thing has fully been settled yet. Because that still might be an issue. I don't know. But also, like, McAllister, granted, she never saw Harry's human form, but once again, like, Liv might accidentally bring her into the fold about, like, oh my god, Harry's an alien. That might get exposed the entire town at the end of this. I don't know. I'm so interested to see how this season plays out. Like I said, there's threads there, but I feel like a lot of the major overarching things, well, except for the whole, like, they're not going to resolve that in the next episode. At least I don't think, the whole Grey situation. I mean, he has the plan, but that might be like the beginning stages of the plan, might be kind of how they end everything, but I doubt everything's going to get resolved, because that's the main through line. And now Harry being a dad now, well, I mean, he's like, technically he was a dad already, because the real Harry Vanderspiegel has a daughter, so, who popped up, in the first part of the season, so I'm curious. That's definitely going to be interesting. I don't know. I'm just so fascinated where some of those threads are going to go. We'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.